Hey, everybody, I wanted to talk a little bit about anxiety because so many people have it. And anxiety can absolutely stop weight loss, it can put your life on hold, it can make you feel like you are stuck, struggling, can't move forward, it can be crippling, those kind of things. Well, good news is that anxiety, just like many other things, is just a habit. And that may sound a little bit surprising for a lot of you, but it truly is. Anxiety is a learned response that has been habituated or practiced over and over and over again. And whenever you have a habituated response to anything, whether it's food, sex, drugs, watching too much television, any of the things that we kind of quote unquote deem, oh, maybe not the best use of our time and healthy for our bodies, can be put into an unconscious program. And so the good news is that habits can be easily broken and erased in the body because all it is neuroplasticity. So the neurons that fire together wire together. So the more you're anxious or you have a feeling of, that tight, stressed out, increased heart rate, all of those kind of things, those kind of feelings and thoughts end up producing a chemical response in the body. Now, everything is a chemical response. A thought produces things. Thoughts produce chemicals. They produce a neuroelectric response. They produce a magnetic response in the body. So all anxiety is a collection of learned responses or reactions to certain triggers or events. And that can become very accumulative over time and cause people, like I said before, to be absolutely stuck or frozen in a certain state where they feel mired, and then all they can see is this going on in their life. They can't expand out and see the other options that are available to them. So with it being a learned response, it can be unlearned. Anything you create can be uncreated. So because anxiety produces a lot of chemicals, your body becomes literally addicted to those chemicals. So the chemicals that anxiety produces a lot are cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine, the fight or flight type of chemicals that are produced. So the body just believes that it's a reaction. When you get upset at a coworker or you get road rage, if you get, a wrong bill in the mail or something like that, you have a visceral reaction to that. And you might feel anger, you might feel fear, you might feel like the world is against you. There's a myriad of feelings that go along with that. So those feelings create a chemical cocktail in the brain. And as that chemical cocktail in the brain begins to flood the system, the body begins to believe that that is the appropriate reaction that you want to have when you're faced with those certain situations. Now, your body becomes very, very addicted to that storyline. Now, a lot of you are thinking, but that makes zero sense. I don't like anxiety. I don't like to feel that way. That feeling that you get when you feel really stressed and anxious and pulled and overwhelmed in every different direction can be, like I said, absolutely debilitating. But again, you're just addicted to a chemical cocktail that the body is producing. The conscious mind is saying, no, 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 but the unconscious mind believes that that's a perfectly appropriate response. It believes that that coworker, that bill, that road rage, that car is going to hurt you. Pretty simple. It wants to protect you. Unconscious mind has really two specific jobs: protect you, provide you pleasure. Protect you, provide you pleasure. And you're like, well, I want the pleasure thing. That's why we gravitate towards the drugs, the alcohol, the food, the sex, the movies, whatever it is that we use to quote unquote cope and not feel those feelings. So we continue to stuff those feelings down. Feelings are just energy in motion. They produce a chemical cocktail in the brain. Always produce a physical response in the body. For instance, people that watch horror movies, I would say pretty close to 99% of them aren't going to a horror movie to really see how they can slice and dice their fellow man. They are addicted to that feeling, that rush they get when they have that fear response, because the unconscious mind sees it in real time, that it's really happening, that they're really witnessing somebody getting chopped up with an axe or sawed with a chainsaw, and they get a rush of chemicals. And so people that really like horror films are addicted to that fear chemical. Even though in a real life situation, they would be like, oh, hells no, I don't want to do that. It's all the same. The body, the unconscious mind, does not know that it's not happening. So it turns on that fight or flight chemical cocktail reaction. So what do? Oh my gosh, there's so many things to do. There's so many ways to get that energy moving out of the body. So let me give you just a quick example here. Sorry, coming out of the screen. But you can take anything. I mean, if you got a bottle of water, if you got a ball, you got your phone, anything like this. And as you begin to cross it over the midline of the body, anxiety only happens in one specific hemisphere of the brain. And if anxiety is happening only in one specific hemisphere of the brain, when you begin to move an object across the midline of the body, you begin to engage the other hemisphere of the brain. And when you begin to engage the other hemisphere of the brain, that energy starts to diffuse and to deactivate. And it brings on a parasympathetic response, which is producing another chemical called dopamine. Now, in anxiety, we want to trade one chemical addiction for another chemical addiction. The body runs on chemicals. It loves them. We love them, but we have the world's most amazing and sophisticated pharmacy in our minds and in our bodies. And all we have to do is learn how to turn those chemicals on. So just that is one very simple exercise that you can do to begin to decrease that anxiety level. The more you're aware that that's how you're reacting and that you're being addicted to those chemicals, the more you can turn on a different chemical reaction that brings that anxiety level down, turns on the parasympathetic system where the heart rate slows down, the breathing relaxes, the muscles relax, turns on a completely different chemical cocktail so that you're able then to breathe, move that energy out of the system. Yes, you experienced it. There's nothing wrong with experiencing something, but it's how you react to something over and over and over again that creates the habit. So you're going to rewire the brain when you start using anti-anxiety tools. If you want to learn more about anti-anxiety tools, you know what? Just subscribe to my YouTube channel or call my office or text me, DM me, whatever you'd like to do. I'd be happy to share those with you. All right, so perfect example how anxiety can get pretty well stuck in the body. Horse people out there, you know I've been around horses my entire life. Have had, I don't know, 17 bones broken in my entire body, and they all have to do with horses. Now, am I afraid of horses? No. But I had one specific accident where I broke 2 bones in my body, had to have surgery, all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to go into that. But it was enough to spook me. And I wasn't scared of horses. What I was fearful of was the fall. And so that was causing a lot of anxiety when it came to my riding ability. At the time, I had a young 4-year-old horse. He was still pretty green. He liked to flip ends. Yes, horse people, you can laugh at that because you know exactly what I'm talking about. He was tall. He was 16 hands tall. So that's about 5 foot at the shoulder. Add me, I'm another 5'8", so that's another 4 feet on top of that. So you're about 9-10 feet in the air by the time you get on the saddle and all that kind of stuff. And then of course, if they launch you in the air, you're even higher up. And we know that gravity works, right? Well, this was how I dealt with this particular situation. At the time, I didn't know anything about hypnosis. I didn't know anything really, wasn't really studying the unconscious mind or the brain or how it worked very closely. But I knew instinctively that had I allowed that fear, that anxiety feeling when I got on that horse, that I would never ride again. And it wasn't, again, the fear of the horse, it was the fear of the fall. And I can specifically remember, I thought this is either going to be the best ride of my life or it's going to be the last ride of my life. Took the horse out through the gate, into the pasture, got on, and I had myself a little conversation and come to Jesus meeting with my horse. And I just said, hey, you know what? We are either going to do this and you're going to take really good care of me, or I'm done and I'm going to sell you and I'm going to move on with my life. And I made a very conscious choice, a conscious decision at that point, not to let that fear override years and years and years of an extremely enjoyable pastime for me. Of course, I made the decision that I was going to ride the horse. And I was so glad I did, because the longer I rode on that ride, the more comfortable I felt, the more confident I felt, the more that energy was dissipated through hippotherapy, because that's what horses are, hippotherapy. I don't know where they got that term. It's kind of interesting, but that was a choice point for me. And I was able to overcome those fearful, anxious feelings that I had. Now, did that mean from that point on, I was reckless and chose to get on bucking broncs and all that kind of stuff? No, I was cautious, and I used some common sense with that, and I still do to this day. But I'm so glad I didn't allow that initial fear, and it was a very valid fear. My body wanted to protect me from that same exact thing happening because it was going off experience, and yet it trumped all of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times that I had rode a horse and never had gotten into an accident. Isn't that kind of interesting? But it was so traumatic and it was so emotional that it had created an unconscious program in my body. And so that's just a little bit to show you about anxiety. I have lots of tools, lots of tricks, lots of Jedi mind tricks out there that we can teach you, show you, help you to learn, because all it is a learned response. It's a habitual response. And we can change those habits by changing the underlying chemical structure that's being put into the body, and you can become addicted to some really new, fun, and amazing chemicals like dopamine, which is really fun. All right, guys, happy trails. I'll talk to you later. Bye.